All right, everyone. Welcome back to, I guess this is an Inspired a Galaxy episode, kind of in a way, right? Because Inspired a Galaxy was born of things that inspired George Lucas. And one of the things that really inspired George Lucas was history and this pursuit of knowledge and these crazy kind of serial adventures. And all of that culminated into what we now know as Indiana Jones. So we figured what better time to be talking about Indiana Jones, the character, the movies, the games, all of that stuff, because we're getting ready for the fifth installment. Cassia, I know you're pretty excited about the fifth installment of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, that's actually why we released the audio drama on June 23rd, so it wouldn't interfere with people seeing Dial of Destiny on June 30th.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a fifth Indiana Jones in the works for a long time. We're finally getting it. It's just coming out in about 5 days from us recording this. This episode is going to come out kind of to coincide with that, and then probably on our Patreon, and maybe then to the main feed, we'll be doing kind of a review of Dial of Destiny after we've both had a chance to see it. But I know that you have no patience at all. You just told me you can't wait to get out and see it. You're actually seeing it at like a sneak preview the day before, is that right?
Yeah, on the 29th, I'm actually going to see it with Coden, who was the first co-host of this podcast. So, yeah, it'll be fun to kind of dip my toes back into the Lucasfilm realm of things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we haven't gotten in any new Lucasfilm film projects for a while, so it's going to be fun to see that logo show up there on the big screen once again and check back in with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But before we do that, it's important to go back to kind of where all of this story got started and talk about the films that led us up to where we are now. And that, of course, was Raiders of the Lost Ark being kind of the first installment here of our Indiana Jones Chronicles, more or less. So, story has it is George Lucas makes Star Wars, thinks it's going to be this massive failure. So him and his buddy Steven Spielberg go out of town, go to Hawaii to not listen to the, all the newspapers that were going to be like, the Star Wars movie was the biggest flop of all time. They didn't want to hear any of that. They wanted to go to the beach and hang out and, just be friends and chat about stuff and the things that they liked. And apparently this conversation came up about James Bond and this character idea that George Lucas had, for this character who would go on to become Indiana Jones. And they kind of made, kind of this little friendly pact right then and there to, one day, after Star Wars is done, after Jaws is done, we'll go back and we'll make that little film about Indiana Jones. And that's what they did. In 1981, Indiana Jones, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, comes out, and it takes over. It takes the world by storm. This movie is great. It does all sorts of gangbusters at the box office. It is the winner of 4 Academy Awards, which is pretty great. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, and it won 4 of those. So it won for Best Art Direction and Set Decoration. It won for Best Sound. It won for Best Film Editing. It won for Best Visual Effects. And it won a Special Achievement Award then for Ben Burt for sound effects editing. So this movie was a pretty big deal, and it was very fun. So Cassia, do you remember seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time? Was this something that you saw, back, we as a little kid, or is Indiana Jones a newer franchise for you? I know you're catching up like on James Bond, one of the inspirations for this. What about Indiana Jones?
So I was always curious about Indiana Jones, but at the age I was, when I was at my aunt and uncle's, they're like, you're not quite old enough for those yet. So I was like, okay, like I'll get into Star Wars, loved it. It was kind of like a question mark, and then I think the first time I saw it was at a dentist's office, and the dentist is like, maybe we will fast forward this part, and it's like, looking back on it, like, I don't know why they fast forwarded when Indy, Anna, and Marion were on the boat, because nothing really happens, like he just falls asleep before anything can happen. But
True.
Yeah, and then when was it that the DVD trilogy was released with all the bonus features?
Yeah, I actually have that box set. I should pull it out to see exactly when that came out. I think that it came out right around probably the year 2000, if memory serves me correct. But yeah, there was this box set of kind of that original trilogy of films, and that I think at least to me, who grew up seeing these, either on like a VHS rental or seeing them on television, that box set was really kind of what cemented me as a fan of Indiana Jones there as kind of a late teenager, I guess.
Yeah, so I was introduced to Indiana Jones a little bit later than Star Wars, but in a way it kind of like added to the allure, I guess. It's like this is Star Wars is cooler older sibling or older cousin, and it's still very, like Lucasfilms. So I was like, oh, these are so much fun. It was fun to kind of watch them, and I don't know, like I didn't watch like a lot of kind of the bigger movies growing up, so I felt like kind of cool. And like one of my cousins was like, are they going to a bar after the movie's over? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, I heard them swear. Like, that's like, what are you watching? I'm like, it's Indiana Jones. And it just kind of funny stuff like that. And like, I felt like, oh yeah, I'm so bad, but like, uh, yeah. Indiana Jones, like, loved the trilogy. And then, the fourth one ended up coming out like later when I was in high school. So, yeah, it's just a fun franchise. I think like for me, like Star Wars comes first. I grew up with Harry Potter, loved them, and then it's probably Indiana Jones.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a very fun series of films, and I'm excited to see what they do with Dial of Destiny and see, if that opens more doors or closes more doors. I don't know. I'm just excited for it, and I was excited to go back and rewatch kind of the four films that got us to where we are now. So why don't we talk about these movies a little bit? We're not going to go into like a crazy like deep dive on these movies, but just kind of talk about them a little bit. Some of the things that we liked, the themes, kind of stuff like that. So let's get this started off, just like we did back in 1981 with Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, according to IMDb, in 1936, archaeologist and adventurer Indiana Jones is hired by the U.S. government to find the Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis can obtain its awesome powers. Yeah, those powers are pretty awesome. Indeed, they will melt your face straight off. And this was the movie that got us started. Like I said, it was the winner of 4 Academy Awards. It was nominated for 5 others, including Best Picture. And Raiders of the Lost Ark stands out on a lot of lists as, kind of one of the pinnacles of like this action adventure movie genre. So what about Raiders of the Lost Ark? Cassia, what stands out about this movie to you, or what kind of themes or things do you like about this movie, or what makes Raiders of the Lost Ark so great?
I think it's just kind of like the definitive action adventure movie. Like, even though like I can be like, oh, I think these aspects didn't age so well, like I don't think about them when I watch them, and I'm just like, this is casted, directed, written, paced and shot so well, like it's hard for me to kind of like see the mistakes. And like if I see any, I'm kind of just like entranced by the experience. And a lot of creatives like M. Night Shyamalan, I think he has a poster of this as like in his office as like one of like his perfect films like he aspires to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is actually like considered like Spielberg's like one of his favorite movies. Like he can like just watch it and like not think about like he worked on it, he can just be entertained by it.
Yeah, exactly. It is a very entertaining film. You get started there with that kind of big action set piece. We mentioned that kind of the one of the inspirations for this was James Bond, and kind of that kind of initial like action set piece that sets kind of the tone for the movie and the tone of who James Bond was going to be. It's very much the same here as we get Indiana Jones. He's going through this temple trying to get this this golden golden idol from this thing, and then you get the kind of that crazy little ball that drops down and chases him out of there. It's kind of this fun kind of chase adventure, and then we see Indiana Jones as the professor, but really he has his heart in kind of more of this adventure, and then off in the pursuits of the Ark of the Covenant, and we catch up with this old flame, Marion, who's played by
Carrie Allen.
yeah, Karen Allen, that's right.
Ah,
Catches up with her in Nepal there at this bar, and they're off on their adventure. As a race against the clock, more or less against the Nazis to get this prize that they're seeking, the Ark of the Covenant. I really like it. I mean, it's a fun adventure film. I like the kind of the settings that they're going through, like these dig sites. We talked about it a lot, Cassia, and kind of our KOTOR adaptation stuff and the sections on Korriban. We always mention Indiana Jones kind of in these sections because we like kind of this fun almost campy in a way, but kind of swashbuckling sort of action sequences that you're getting here with Indiana Jones, and kind of the pitfalls and how he keeps kind of finding himself through happenstance, kind of the victory, keeps kind of stumbling from one mess into the next. And I always kind of like that. I think there's something very relatable about Indiana Jones to people. And I always kind of like that, even like as a little kid growing up. And then you get the fun, like treasure hunting stuff, right? They go down, they have the Staff of Ra. They're looking at the map and trying to find where this thing is. And they're, trying to dig it up out of the earth and stuff. And it's really fun and a genre that we don't see a lot of, archaeology type of things. So I think that it's fun in that sense too.
yeah, and with KOTOR, like we kind of talked about, the search for the star map is kind of like Indiana Jones quest. So it's very much kind of like that Lucasfilm DNA going on, and yeah, it'd be kind of fun if it were ever adapted to kind of see that genre influence. But I actually have like the Hallmark Staff of Ra perpetual calendar, and I
Nice.
kind of wanted some like a calendar, like I wouldn't have to like hang up on a wall if you have like limited space, and rather than getting a new calendar each year, it's like you kind of just move it each day. It's kind of more like, I don't know, it's almost like a meditation on the days, like it's intentional, you move it forward and stuff, and
Hmm.
I love it. And I actually got my parents, because they're going to be visiting Israel later this year, and Jordan, the Hallmark. It's inspired by the Ark of the Covenant with the two cherubim on top facing each other, like from the Ark of the Covenant. Like it's a photo frame. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's lots of really great, kind of iconography, and of course here in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you get a couple of big ones right away for Indiana Jones the character. Between kind of that fedora that he's wearing, the bullwhip that he is carrying around, obviously the Ark of the Covenant itself, which is pretty symbolic and things, and you can go online and see all the little hidden details on that. You got little R2D2 and C3PO there on the Ark and stuff, which is pretty fun. But yeah, this was kind of this PG film, and despite Cassie not being able to watch the the scene on the submarine where love is about to take place, but doesn't. It's actually a very very kind of touching, like intimate scene between Indiana Jones and Marion. There, I think. By and large, this is just a very fun movie. The pacing for it is amazing. There's never like a second of Raiders of the Lost Ark that feels like it's getting too long. It's cut, pretty quick. It's going from kind of action to action to action to action, all the way through to the end, and it's really kind of a masterpiece in that sense, I think. And that's one of the reasons why I think that people really, can still appreciate it. All these years on, right? 42 years on since this thing released. People keep going back to it and pointing out, the way that it was made and how well it was put together.
Yeah, I think Marsha Lucas deserves more thanks and credit for improving this film, and also the original Star Wars: A New Hope. I mean, she won an Oscar, I believe, for editing A New Hope, but originally Marion wasn't in the ending, and she rightfully pointed out like people are gonna wonder what happens to her and like what happens to the Ark of the Covenant. So she totally fixed the ending, um, and also kind of throughout the movie, I think it has really good exposition because like he knows what he's talking about, and he has to tell people who are kind of high up in the government, so he's not talking down to them, but he is an expert in his field, you know? I think it's one of the best exposition scenes in films, personally.
Absolutely, it is, and it's just a tale of this treasure hunt, and but it still kind of has this core element of making these characters that are interesting and you're kind of rooting for throughout, right? So you get Indiana Jones, obviously, as our main character here, and Marion, that we mentioned, but you also get kind of the friends and allies of Indiana Jones in this that we're introduced to in this film. Sala, who's played by John Rhys Davies, and Brody, who's played by Denholm Elliott. They're going to reprise their roles kind of later in the film franchise here as well, and Sala, I think, is going to be even back for the new one, so pretty excited for that. But yeah, it's really just kind of these this very lovable kind of group of people that you're pulling for, facing down, the ultimate, evil, embodied here by the Nazis in the search of this ancient, all powerful relic, and yeah, it's great. I don't, there's a lot of things to be said for Raiders of the Lost Ark, but basically, it's a really good movie. It's about perfect, for sure. And that was what got us kicked off. So, any final thoughts here on Raiders of the Lost Ark before we take a little darker turn, Cassia?
If you haven't seen it, it is on Disney Plus, I believe.
That's right, absolutely. So we've got Raiders of the Lost Ark there in 1981. Coming next, of course, you can't have a film that's nominated for Best Picture that wins the box office and, wins 4 Academy Awards without getting a follow-up. That's true today. That was true back in 1981. So fast forward to 1984, we have Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So everyone was excited, of course, to get Indiana Jones back on the big screen. People were excited to see what sort of adventure he was going to go on, right? Save the Ark of the Covenant. What do you got next, Indiana Jones? Well, as it turns out, we're going back in time because George Lucas is attached to this, and playing with different weird timelines is something that Mr. Lucas likes to do. See the Clone Wars, starting your movie franchise on episode 4, all those things. So we're going back to 1935. In 1935, Indiana Jones is tasked by Indian villagers with reclaiming a rock stolen from them by a secret cult beneath the catacombs of an ancient palace. Yep, that's true. That's pretty vague, IMDb, but that's okay. That's okay. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It starts with a big, fantastical musical number, which is kind of fun. It's very. I don't want to say that it's bad because I don't think that it's bad, but it is a little jarring. I think you go from the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark to this very flamboyant musical number. Willie Scott played by Kate Capshaw there, and then of course we get Kei Kwan playing Short Round in this one. But Indiana Jones, we're going from the desert to the jungle. And into these temples for this one. So, what do you think about Temple of Doom? It's a little darker than the first installment. Cassia, would you have seen this like the same time that you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark? Was that all kind of lumped in together there? Or, if they're cutting out the submarine scene for you, then they're probably cutting all of this out, I'm guessing.
Well, that was when I first saw it is when they kind of fast forwarded some stuff, but like when I got it on DVD, I pretty much like just watched it all. So I mean, I think I did get some warnings about like Temple of Doom being darker and scarier, but maybe a lot of things went over my head as a kid. But kind of rewatching it now, I think this film is better than I remembered. I think this is like considered the weakest of the original kind of like trilogy. But kind of rewatching it, I gave it 4 stars. Like I think it's better than I remembered, but it also has some worse aspects than I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And like watching this after I watched all the James Bond films, I was like, well, the opening wasn't like one for one Bondian, the opening number felt more like it, and I thought it was different and it was fun stylistically, and we got to see Indiana Jones rocking the white suit jacket with the red rose, which reminded me of Sean Connery.
That's right. Yeah, it reminds you of Sean Connery there. Spoiler warning for our next installment, but yeah, definitely kind of the same kind of thing, right? Another one of these little actiony kind of intros that kind of gets us thrust into the story and off on this kind of crazy adventure to get these stones from this weird group of people that are underneath of this temple, which a Temple of Doom, getting your heart pulled out there for sure. So yeah, this was a little bit darker. It was rated PG. This one came out in 1984. This and Gremlins are pretty much considered the two films that kind of created the PG-13 ranking, and actually Steven Spielberg played a pretty big part in getting the PG-13 that rating put into place. Even he said, this is probably a little too dark for, some kids, so maybe we need something, between the PG and the R rating, so thus is born the PG-13. So directed again here by Steven Spielberg. I mentioned Kate Capshaw and Kei Kwan are in this one, playing kind of the helpers, the allies of Indiana Jones here in this film, and we're off on our way to go check out these stones at the Temple of Doom. Two Oscar nominations here, one for Best Effects, Visual Effects, so Dennis Muren there, and it was nominated for Best Original Score for John Williams. Did not win, but that's okay. The Indiana Jones theme definitely has stood the test of time here. So this is a little bit darker. It's a little bit more campy and a little bit more flamboyant, especially the stuff with like Kate Capshaw, I think, here in this film, which I think could, if you're going to let something get to you about this movie, it's probably that. But I always kind of thought this was pretty fun. I mean, it has kind of the more like fun, like centric bits. You've got like the mine car kind of scene at the end. You've got they're riding around on the elephants. You have all the stuff with like the creepy bugs. So that stuff's kind of all fun and playful and disgusting. You have the big pit of the snakes in the first film, and this one it's going to the bugs. So I prefer snakes to bugs, so that part always kind of grossed me out, where they're reaching in through the door. They have the very disturbing like dinner scene where they're like cutting open the I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about just go watch the dinner scene, or don't watch it close to your own dinner for sure. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know, this one's pretty fun. Like I said, it was a little campy. Of the three, this is the one that I probably liked the least, even growing up, and I would have seen these all about the same time coming up. But certainly there's some fun elements to this one that I like quite a bit. It's definitely worthwhile, and it's interesting, kind of in hindsight now. It's not something that I ever would have thought of, back when I was a kid watching these for the first time, that this was actually a prequel to the first one. Like I never even would have thought of that, and I don't know how like widely thought of that was by people, or if that was just something that people kind of worked out later. Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense on that timeline.
1935 takes place before 1936. What?
That's right. Yeah, it's all crazy. But what do you think, Cassia? What kind of stands out about Temple of Doom, or anything that you like or don't like? You've just watched these all pretty recently too. So what do you think about the Temple of Doom here?
I didn't appreciate Academy Award winner Kei Kwan as Short Round as much as I should have back in the day. This is his debut, and he's amazing. I mean, he was in The Goonies and Everything Everywhere All at Once. But I just kind of wish like there had been more films between that, because he is such a good actor, and I do kind of wish that Kei Kwan would have been in Indiana Jones 4 and the upcoming Indiana Jones 5. Maybe there's a post-credit scene I don't know about, but we'll figure that out when we get there. Some people think Willie Scott is annoying. I think she's funny at times and she's annoying at times, but kind of rewatching it now, I'm like, she's reacting 100% like a normal person would react in that situation.
Right.
Like, she's a performer, and then all of a sudden she's in a jungle and like having to fight a cult, and it's like, what? um,
That's right. Yeah, everyone thinks that they're Marion Ravenwood in those situations, but really we're all Willie Scott.
yeah. And I hear that like to do the bug scenes, like I think like Kate Capshaw had to have like a tranquilizer to do that scene. I'm like, good for you for even doing it, because like I would read the script and then like bugs appear like in the script, I would just like burn it and be like, okay, not doing that.
Yeah.
um, I did kind of think that the Willie and Indiana Jones romance was kind of unnecessary and uninspired, and like
Hmm.
kind of when you hear about the behind the scenes, like Lucas was, I think, going through a divorce and Spielberg had gone through a breakup. Like they weren't in the best headspace, so I think they kind of made it darker than it really needed to be. But Spielberg and Lucas have both like admitted the film was too dark and kind of like apologized for misrepresenting Hinduism in India, and actually
Hmm.
like the Indian government banned this, so it's not actually filmed in India. It was filmed in Sri Lanka. And like I know next to nothing about Hinduism, but like uh from what I gathered, the Thuggee cult was mostly the invention of the British colonial regime, or at least a very intense exaggeration. So
Hmm.
um yeah, like probably the most stuck out to me when I was watching this one. Like it's still entertaining, but um, it's not my first go-to Indiana Jones.
Yeah, same for me. It's not my first go to, but I do think that this is still a really fun movie, and I think that it fits pretty well within to the mythos of Indiana Jones and the stories that they were trying to tell through these films, and then kind of what we got with the comic books and young Indiana Jones and stuff like that. I think that this all kind of fits together like in that same world, and I think that that's kind of interesting in a way to think about something as tonally completely different as what we saw in the first one, where it's still trying to keep kind of the same like bits of levity, but it's this much darker, scarier tone of a story. And I don't know. I always thought that that was just kind of it was kind of like an interesting like amalgamation of what they're trying to do. But there's some really great and gorgeous, kind of scenery and things here as they're moving, throughout. Kind of this place into the temple and out of the temple into like that rope bridge and stuff. There's some stuff that looks absolutely great. I really like kind of the way that they did like the set design, like underneath where like this cult in the mine kind of thing is. I always thought that that looked really cool. With like the skull and the little glowing stones in it, and all this kind of fire and stuff going on. I always thought that it looked really cool. So I don't know. That's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. If you're worried later when we talk about a refrigerator surviving nuclear blast, don't worry, because in this one we had a river raft just tossed out of an airplane. You can ride that down safe and sound. So see, Indiana Jones has always been doing things in a not very conventional way and living to tell about it. But we're going back to the roots a little bit here for our third installment, Cassia. Now, growing up, this was always my favorite of the Indiana Jones films. I think it holds a pretty dear place in a lot of people's hearts. It's a father-son story, which is nice. It's a very fun adventure. We get to meet young Indiana Jones in this one, but it is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, coming from 1989, rated PG-13. This one, in 1938, after his father goes missing while pursuing the Holy Grail, Indiana Jones finds himself up against the Nazis again to stop them from obtaining its powers. So the Nazis didn't learn their lesson the first time around, apparently, still going after these biblical artifacts and on their way to find the Holy Grail. So we get this one started off with young Indiana Jones. So, Cassie, let's start there. Young Indiana Jones. What do you think about this first section here with River Phoenix portraying young Indy?
I loved the young Indiana Jones intro. Some people are like, it slows the film down. I'm like, it's fun, so it's okay. Have
That's
fun,
that's false. It is fun.
Yeah, I think it's like a good intro too. We see him crack the whip for the first time, and he gets his Harrison Ford esque scar, and like we kind of see the allure of like the the hat, uh, which is like a part of the iconic Indiana Jones silhouette, you know?
Hmm.
And River Phoenix was an incredible actor. Rest in peace. And he was just so talented. And there's some downsides to the entertainment industry, and sometimes it chews you up and spits you out, you know. So I'm just sad we lost him, you know. So
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the first section here. You mentioned it, Cassia. Yeah, it's basically where Indiana Jones becomes all the things that Indiana Jones is, right? Gets his hat, gets his whip, gets his scar, gets his fear of snakes. All this stuff happens like in this first 10 seconds, and then he gets home, and his dad doesn't want to hear anything about it, right? He just tells him to count to 10 in Greek before he's going to deal with them, and that gets us started on our story here. So, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. It won one. It was nominated for Best Sound and Best Music Original Score, and it won Best Sound Effects Editing, again for Ben Burtt. So, yeah, the sound effects are a recurring theme in Indiana Jones and Lucasfilm properties all in all. But like I said, this was always kind of my favorite one, and I think when we talk about Korriban and we talk about it as a treasure hunt, I think this is really what I always have in my back of my mind, right? He's got that little notebook that he keeps kind of going through and looking at puzzles. It's very very inspirational to something like the Uncharted Nathan Drake games, where you've got your little notebook in your pocket you keep pulling out trying to solve these puzzles and get these clues and things, and that's where this is coming from. And I always really like that, pulling out this little thing and piecing together some little puzzle to move on to your next step to find your buried treasure, so to speak. So and this one is really great. It has some really fun kind of locales that we visit. We go to Venice there, and we go underneath of this library, and this movie, right, we've done snakes, we've done insects. This time we're doing rats or mice.
rats.
That's not great. That's not great. But Indiana Jones escapes again, of course. This time, as I mentioned, we've got Marcus Brody and Sala are back. From Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're back, but this time we're introduced to Dad, to Papa Jones, Sean Connery playing Professor Henry Jones. So it's come very much full circle, right? If Sean Connery and James Bond were the inspiration for Indiana Jones, it would make sense that James Bond is literally Indiana Jones' dad, right?
Yeah, my Indy watch collided with my Bond watch from this year. So we had Harrison Ford and Sean Connery in one movie, and they make a fun combo with a great dynamic. Like if people had been casted differently, like some of the lines could be annoying, but like Connery nails it, and it was nice to see him play a brainy nerd, kind of something different than his James Bond character and persona, and Alison Doody is a great cast too. I believe she was 19 when they filmed this, and I'm like, whoa, like just
Yeah.
to be able to nail an accent and act and like be in like a huge blockbuster. And maybe they shouldn't have done a romance with her and her father, because like just the age gaps are, even with her and Harrison Ford, are really big. But she did a great job.
Yeah, she's really good. She's a very interesting character, obviously, as this scientist that's working for, the Nazi regime and trying to recover this, the Cup of Christ, right? The the Holy Grail that they're going after. But she kind of has her own motivations, which I think is interesting, and she's very much a character, and she does a really good job of kind of playing this almost not necessarily like a double agent, right? But having a little bit more depth, other than she's just this evil person trying to get this thing for world domination. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. I really like kind of the interactions between Professor Jones and then Marcus Brody, especially when the kind of chase scene and they get captured and they're in this tank together, and that's always kind of fun and jokey. And then of course getting Sala back is really great. But yeah, I always really like this one. Like I said, kind of because it's kind of this treasure hunt kind of thing, and then it really gets into this kind of fun more like intimate, like bonding story between a father and a son going through, and trying to see kind of the world through each other's eyes, right? You have Indiana Jones, who's following kind of in the footsteps of his father, in the pursuit of this Holy Grail, and now you have Professor Henry Jones, who's kind of living this more crazy you know adventure type of archaeology that Indiana Jones has been living. So they're seeing kind of the world through each other's eyes, and I always thought that was really fun and really great. And I think kind of the on-screen chemistry of Harrison Ford and Sean Connery, I thought was always really well done. Obviously, kind of top of their craft of acting, but I thought that they played off of each other really well and were a believable kind of father-son pairing in this film.
Yeah, and I think like part of me is kind of like, is this a 7 out of 10 film? I'm like, it's a good one. Maybe I think there's like 6 chases in it. I'm like, maybe it's 1 or 2 too many, but like nostalgia for me, I'm like, this is an 8 out of 10 film. Deal with it, Cassia. So yeah, it's just fun. You can kind of see the like, I think like where Lucas and Spielberg would eventually go. You kind of have like a young Indiana Jones, and Lucas was like, I'm going to make a young Indiana Jones TV show, which is on Disney Plus. Sometimes it's difficult to find it, but watch it as soon as possible. I kind of wonder how long it'll be there, but you can also see like Spielberg, kind of like the scenes in Germany. Like, I think he kind of had the beginnings of Schindler's List on his mind.
Yeah, that very well could be. This was into the late '80s for sure, so that would make sense, kind of from a timing perspective. Obviously, probably at least in their minds, I would think that you're telling the story. You've named it The Last Crusade, and the final shot is Indiana Jones riding off into the sunset. So you have to think, at least on some level, that this was going to be the end. I think that they had kind of this deal to do 4 or 5 films with Paramount for these characters, but I would have to think, between the name and that final shot and kind of the way that this wrapped up, that this was probably in their heads, at least in 1989 when this came out, going to be kind of the final ride for these characters. And if you do any like reading or like digging into Indiana Jones 4, that was kind of the case. There were always these kind of scripts being written for an Indiana Jones 4, and some of them are like absolutely insane. You can Google those and go and read them, and they're a lot even crazier than what we ended up getting with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull here, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think that it was always kind of the potential to carry on, but I think that they probably felt like this was more or less wrapped up until fast forward about 20 years when kind of Spielberg and Lucas and Harrison Ford are getting together saying, that might be kind of fun to go back and revisit that world. But what do you think? Do you think, am I right kind of in my thinking that there was probably some thoughts that this was it for Indiana Jones?
Well, Monty Python and the Holy Grail took the title The Holy Grail, so they couldn't call it Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. But I'm kind of just kidding there. But maybe blockbusters are hard to pull off sometimes. They're a lot of work, and like directing, writing, and acting in them, they're huge. Like everyone has to be on the top of their game. So maybe it was kind of planned to be like, maybe they said 4 or 5, but then they're like, let's just do 3. 3 is a good number. But I kind of wish like the Indiana Jones series would have been like maybe every few years or so you get a new one. Mm-hmm. I think it just would have been fun, and I kind of think like looking back on it, I think I watched Indiana Jones 4 Kingdom of the Crystal Skull 2 or 3 times when it came out. But like rewatching it now, I don't think it's bad. I just think like it needed a few films between it, because Last Crusade was like a father-son film, and then 4 was a little bit of a father-son film. But maybe that's jumping too far ahead.
Yeah, that's entirely possible, and maybe there did need to be some, and it's interesting to think about. Just to step back from these films for a second, you have Harrison Ford who's playing Indiana Jones, and obviously we talk a lot about Star Wars, and it's fairly well documented that Harrison Ford could not care less about Han Solo, about Star Wars, about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But from everything that I've ever read or seen or heard from Harrison Ford is that he's really protective of Indiana Jones. So there's apparently something about this character that really, he can identify himself in, and it feels really attached to, and I think that that's kind of neat, I guess, that someone would hold on to something so endearingly, I guess, especially when you think of Harrison Ford as this more of a curmudgeonly guy, right, who doesn't want to be bothered by anything that's going to bother him, that he would be really in love with this character and want to keep bringing it back to life over the course of 44 years. So
Yeah, I mean, that kind of comforts me because if any studio were to try to um, make an Indiana Jones movie using I think like Harrison Ford would come back to haunt them and like literally haunt them and be like, "You're not doing it. It's me. I'm gone. You're not gonna make an Indiana Jones." Like, I could see that happening, you know. But yeah, like it, it is kind of funny because I see so many similarities like between Indiana Jones and Han Solo, but yeah, Harrison Ford like loves Indiana Jones, like does not care about Han Solo, and like good for him because I don't think Han Solo would care about Han Solo that much.
yeah, that's fair. That's a fair observation. That's true. That's true. But I do think Indiana Jones would care about Indiana Jones. So maybe we're
Yeah.
onto something there. So that is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's a pretty great ending to this kind of trilogy that we got here up through 1989. And then we're going to have to take a bit of a layoff if we want to keep going with our Indiana Jones stories. Like I'd said, there were a bunch of kind of story scripts and story outlines and things like that written over the course of the next, I don't know, close to 20 years, more or less, until finally one day they announced that we're getting a new Indiana Jones. It's called Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think there was a big debate, or they took a long time to reveal what the title of this was going to be, and then kind of was all over the place in terms of what is this going to be, what's it, what is a crystal skull, what does that mean, and eventually we're going to find out in 2008, rated PG-13. This says in 1957, Indiana Jones becomes entangled in a Soviet plot to uncover the secret behind mysterious artifacts known as the Crystal Skulls. Cassia, this was not nominated for any Academy Awards, therefore it did not win any Academy Awards. There's a fun little interesting tidbit though. We're introduced to a new villain in this, by the name of Irina Spalko, played by Kate Blanchett. She was nominated for 2 Academy Awards that same year, so that's kind of fun. She was nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role and Best Leading Actress, so I think that that's a fun little tidbit that she got 2 Oscar nominations and then was also in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. A lot of people like to dog on this movie, Cassia, and is that just or not? I don't know. I don't know for sure. But what I do know for sure is that this was the second highest grossing film of 2008. So people apparently either were not being completely honest with how much they didn't like it because they were going back to see it a bunch of times. Did
Yeah,
you see this in the movie theater in 2008?
fun story. Uh, Back in the day, midnight movies were a thing, and my high school rented out a theater, so I bought a ticket and saw it at midnight opening night, and it was just fun. And some people got "I love New York" shirts and added like a I and a D on it, so it's like "I love Indy," you know. And
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was a fine movie. Like, is it up there with the original 3? In my mind, no, but like revisiting it, I was very impressed with the film's direction, cinematography, casting. People dog on Shia LaBeouf, but he looks exactly like a son of like Harrison Ford, I think.
He does look like a son of Harrison Ford, and that's who he's playing in this, right? He's playing Mutt Williams, the son of Indiana Jones. We get Karen Allen is back to reprise her role as Marion Ravenwood. I mentioned Kate Blanchett, but we've also got John Hurt playing Professor Oxley, and Ray
Yeah.
Winstone playing Mac, who is like a secret double, triple, quadruple agent through this thing, which is kind of fun, kind of fun. Now there's a couple of things. Let's go ahead and we'll get these out of the way. There's a couple things that people always seem to point to when they say that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull isn't that good. They point to the scene that there is an atomic bomb that's going off, and Indiana Jones hides himself in a lead-lined refrigerator and survives the blast. They point to that. They point to Mutt swinging through the vines of this jungle with a bunch of monkeys. They always point to that and say that that's not good. And then, of course, they'll point to the aliens and stuff and say that that's not good. I will say that those three things are pretty fine. I don't really have that big of a problem with them. I do have one kind of big problem with this movie, in that they go into some quicksand. Marion and Indiana Jones, they get stuck there, and they're trying to pull them out. Mutt throws them a snake, which is done, largely for comedic benefit, right? Because Indiana Jones hates snakes, but they end up dragging him out of this quicksand with a snake, and that's not how snakes work. So
It would kill the snake and it would probably bite him. So I did think that was a little over the top, but yeah, like the refrigerator, like you can actually, if it's a lead line refrigerator, they used to make things to last, and he wouldn't survive like being thrown, but possibly he could have, like in a movie, survived in that lead lined refrigerator. And I kind of just look at this as like the earlier films were inspired by 30s and 40s film serials and stuff with cliffhanger endings, and this one's vibing with the 50s B movie style, and that's why there's the Red Scare in this. That's why there's Russians, and like after Schindler's List, I think like Spielberg is like, I'm not gonna like make Nazis like silly like that ever again. And I think like the problems I kind of have, like most, like pretty much the whole main cast was white, like
mm-hmm.
Indy 1 through 3 weren't perfect in that respect, but they incorporated more people, like characters from different backgrounds. And it's not a great look when movies kind of use the Mayans, Incas, and Aztecs interchangeably, and kind of shows like ancient aliens helped indigenous people build an empire,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's not great. And I'm not against aliens in an Indiana Jones movie. I mean, like, we literally saw like the Ark of the Covenant. We saw someone get their heart ripped out of their chest, literally. And the Holy Grail in a super old night. Like, I think like just maybe some people didn't quite get the memo that this movie was inspired by 50s B movies, And that's why I kind of think like more Indiana Jones films, like where they kind of played with like the war years and like the early 50s a little bit more would have helped. But
Right. Yeah.
I do have to say I will miss Lucas and Spielberg. Like, I know they're executive producers, but I will miss Spielberg's direction, because just rewatching this series, like some shots in Raiders, like there are 7 shots in a couple of seconds, and like they're all paced and executed so great. Like, it establishes the character so well, like when in those first few minutes of Raiders, like I just I haven't seen Logan. I was gonna save it until after I saw Indiana Jones 5, but I just wonder, like, will I feel kind of like a little less of a presence of Spielberg and Lucas in 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say. I know that Lucas here in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull wrote kind of the story outline for it. There were a bunch of people that came in that helped write the actual script, but I believe that the only script that he wrote was the Raiders script, if I'm not incorrect. And I think even on that one, Lawrence Kasdan came in and wrote the bulk of the actual script of that. It's hard to say. I mean, being executive producers on there, is this a story that Lucas had previously had? And you have to think too that not only are they going to be on hands as executive producer, someone else who is on hand for all of the other Indiana Jones films is going to be there as well. Kathleen Kennedy, who was on as a production assistant for Spielberg on Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then served as a producer for the rest of the film franchise. So, I mean, it definitely has, kind of the ingredients of the original ones, but, obviously I think it's safe to say probably that George Lucas doesn't really have, too much interest in spending lots of hours and days of doing these and telling these stories of places that
Yeah.
he's been in, and it's hard to say, even with Spielberg, kind of what he has on his plate. Obviously we saw The Fabelmans last year. Is he going to start getting a little choosier with, how he's spending his time now as well, and, what projects he wants to direct? And I think that we're in good hands with James Mangold. Logan is excellent, was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, and then directed nominee for Best Picture of the Year in Ford versus Ferrari, which is a very excellent film, and edited very excellently. And Ford versus Ferrari seems like a film that George Lucas would like, there with the
Yeah.
race cars. So so I don't know. I have high hopes for it. I know kind of the initial kind of critical review is a little spotty here for Dial of Destiny, which is hard to say because I think there were like 12 reviews that came out like 3 minutes after the screening ended at Cannes, and that's where that first number came from. It's bumped back up now that the actual premiere has happened and more people are getting the chance to see it, and then obviously it opens up here in just a couple of days from the time of our recording. But I've got pretty high hopes for it. Yeah, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we went through that a little quick. Let's go back to that here before we wrap up. Yeah, there are some things about this that I really like. I really like kind of the character interactions, especially kind of in dealing with this time, right, and talking about kind of like this Cold War type of stuff, more or less. You get some kind of good stuff at the college between Indiana and the dean, Dean Charles Stanforth, who's played by Jim Broadbent. I liked that. I liked the way that this movie looked by and large. There were a couple things that didn't look quite as good, but I really liked the way that it was shot. It almost felt kind of like this smaller, like, theatrical production in a way, like when they're going through like the graves and stuff like that. Like that felt like very small and intimate, which seemed kind of like this 1950s B movie would have been. And even like some of like the like the aliens are invading type of movies, there's a lot of stuff that is shot like that. And when you're talking about like Indiana Jones and like the Russians standing there, just the way that it's framed and looks, I think looks pretty interesting and pretty fun. And I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, right? These were always kind of meant to be kind of adventure, like almost like big budget riffs on B movies, basically, more or less. And I think that kind of got lost. And part of that, like you said, Cassia, is the kind of length in time between, because when you think back to something when you were in my case 8 years old, by the time I'm 28 years old, that's a lot of time to have passed and be like, well, I felt this way about it the last time I saw it, but that was 2 decades ago. Am I going to feel the same way about it? I've had a lot of life experience in that time, so I think that kind of the time worked against this. And having the final installment, I think that's going to work against it as well. I think, when Dial of Destiny comes back, people will be able to kind of soften the blow of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because it won't be the last Indiana Jones movie. We'll have a new last Indiana Jones movie to to decipher and decide if we like or not.
So yeah, like I think like the Indiana Jones films, like they're pretty solid. They're pretty entertaining. It's a good series to watch on your own or with friends or with family. And I don't know, it's kind of like a little different than Star Wars, but it's Star Wars adjacent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. You can definitely see kind of the imprint that Star Wars and that storytelling had on this. and vice versa, and kind of the other genres that it inspired and what it pulled from. We mentioned James Bond several times, but kind of set the tone for what action adventure movies could be in terms of storytelling and pacing and stuff like that. And that's why it's kind of so revered as this film property and character that we've all grown to love over the last 40 years. And just a couple of days, we're going to get a whole nother installment of it and be able to see what Indiana Jones is up to next.
All right, KOTOR moment here. Okay, so before Bastila joins the Jedi, she kind of remembered her father, who was an archaeologist. What if, in an adaptation, her dad was actually kind of looking for these star maps, and like he's literally, we find his skeleton, like next to one of these star maps. It's like maybe Bastila Shan, like even if she hadn't joined the Jedi, like this was always going to be her destiny, the star map, and just a dream TV spot, in my head for an adaptation that will never happen. But just imagine like Bastila is reunited with her mom, and like her mom is like, we didn't want you to have a dangerous life taking risks, and then it like shows like Bastila having to fight like Sith troopers and like all this stuff, and it's like, and then her mom could continue and be like, and looking for treasure, and like that's literally what she's doing, looking for these star maps. And it's like, yeah, the Jedi are like, we meditate and do all this stuff, like it's not like that, don't worry. And then like some of her companions are just like, that's literally what we do for a living. And I just think it'd be funny. So
that would be amazing. Yeah, that would be an excellent crossover. I like that. I like thinking that that Marion and Indiana are Bastila's parents now.
Yeah, why not?
That's kind of my new headcanon. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got this Dial of Destiny. We don't know what all sort of powers that has. Obviously, or visited by beings from another galaxy far, far away, potentially, in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So that makes sense. It could be. Or maybe Irina Spalko is Bastila's mom. Or maybe Irina Spalko is Kreia in KOTOR 2. Is that possible? Cate Blanchett could play Kreia. I'm okay with that. Let's do that.
I mean, isn't there a character in Star Wars Rebels who like looks identical to Irina Spalko? But
there is, yeah.
I forget the name. Sorry, super fans. But Helena is the name of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character in Dial of Destiny, and Bastila's mom is named Helena, so therefore KOTOR is 100% canon because those two facts are linked.
That's
undeniably.
Right, yeah. 139% canon now for sure. And 139% is how excited I am for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So that's coming out in a couple of days. Cassie is going to see it before I get to. So hopefully I'm gonna
spoil it.
I'm gonna mute her, I think, like on our text messages, so she doesn't spoil it for me. Now I'm seeing it just a couple of days after that, and definitely looking forward to it and looking forward to talking about it. We'll probably, like I said, do that over on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/oldrepublicpodcast. You can go there and check out some behind the scenes stuff we've got for the Bastila audio drama and other kind of bonus episodes and art and stuff like that we've commissioned throughout the course of the podcast. You can go check that out. It's a great way to support us and get some more info. And yeah, we'll be talking about it over there. And I'm excited to see what you think about it. I'm excited to see what I think about it. And I'm excited to hear what all the listeners think about it. So drop us a line and let us know what you think about Indiana Jones, what your favorite installment is, and what you thought about Dial of Destiny after you've had a chance to see it.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.